Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Dave Goodwell, Chair of Planning Committee, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the committee tonight. Should explain that legislation passed by Parliament back in March last year enables us to hold virtual meetings and to take votes on matters before us on the agenda. So that is our authority for meeting this way. We have one application tonight in Misson, but before that we have some business to conduct, so please bear with us. And first of all, I just want to make sure that everyone is connected to the meeting. So I will go around the councillors in alphabetical order. If you could identify yourselves, please. Councillor Brand.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Present, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Charlesworth.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
She hasn't joined the meeting yet, Chair. I'll let you know if she does.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Sanders.
Good evening, Chair. Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Schuller. Councillor Schuller, I think you're on mute.
Did you call me? Sorry, I lost audio there for a second. Apologies. Good evening, everybody.
Hi, great. Good evening. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means there are 9 of us at the moment who will be involved in the discussion and the vote at the end of the evening. We also have a number of officers to assist tonight, and I'd like to make sure that they're connected to us. Mr. Krozak is the head planner. Are you with us?
I'm present, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Wormwold, our legal solicitor.
Yes, present, Chair.
Thank you. Our committee clerk tonight, Mr. Lavender.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And the facilitator for tonight to keep us all connected is Ms. Hensley.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Hopefully we won't lose connection with anyone, but if we do and we can't start it straight away, we will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to enable us to re-establish contact with everyone. So we can move on to the agenda, and the first item is apologies, please, Mr. Lavender.
Well, Chair, we have received apologies from councillors Michael Quigley and Bill Tomlinson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Mr. Wormald, have you received any from anybody?
Yes, Chair, I've received a declaration from Councillor Fielding in agenda item 6C, the planning application. It's a county matters application, and Councillor Fielding is a member of the County Council's planning committee, so she will be leaving for that item.
Thank you very much. And there are no late declarations by anybody else. I take that as a no. Good. Agenda item number 3 is minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 6th of January, which are on pages 5 to 9 of your agenda. I will take these as a true record of the meeting unless anyone wishes to speak against that notion. Okay, those minutes are approved. Agenda item number 4 is minutes of the Planning Consultation Group meeting held on Monday the 11th of January this year, pages 11 and 12. And for anyone listening who doesn't know what the PCG is, that is a subcommittee, the main committee, which considers smaller applications that planning have to deal with. Those minutes are for noting. So is agenda item number 5, the outstanding minutes list. Actions on that for completion later in the year. Agenda item number 6A is the public interest. Miss Beverly Alderson Sandbrook, Head of Regeneration, has deemed that all the reports on the agenda are not confidential. Agenda item number 6B is appeal decisions, and we haven't had any since we last met. So that does bring us on to the one issue before us tonight, agenda item number 6A. As we've been told, it's a county matter, and we're in the position to, as a consultee, to make representation on that. Tonight, the land in question is to the rear of Misson Springs Cottage, Springs Road, Misson. And as I said, it's a county matters application to vary condition 4 of the planning permission 15/01498, that's a county reference, to extend the evaluation and restoration periods of the site for a further 3 years until November 2023, and to relinquish drilling the horizontal well. I'm going to invite Mr. Kozak, please, if you could outline your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to pull up the presentation now, just so members can see the slides. Is everybody able to see that at the moment on the screen?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
can.
So, as Councillor Pidwell's just outlined, this is a county matter application. It's to be determined by Nottinghamshire County Council. Bassett Law District Council is one of the consultees who has an opportunity to comment on the proposal. The planning application is to vary condition 4 of planning permission, which will enable the extension of the evaluation and restoration period of the site for a further 3 years to relinquish drilling the horizontal well that was previously approved. It's proposed to vary condition 4 to read, this permission shall be for a 3-year temporary period only. So the application site forms part of an existing commercial premises known as the Misson Rocket site. The site is located within the northern part of the premises, which specialises in the sale of ex-army vehicles, plant and equipment. And there are currently 5 large warehouse buildings present on the site. This slide shows the site, and you can see that the surrounding area is predominantly agricultural in character. This slide shows the application site in the context of the wider surroundings. As you can see, the site lies to the north of the settlement of Misson and is relatively isolated in its position within the surrounding countryside. This is the site plan and shows how the site is laid out. As you'll see on the photograph and then shown on the next slide, the drilling equipment has already been removed from the site and all that remains is effectively a compound. As described, this photograph shows the current condition of the site. This slide shows the site entrance and is taken from Springs Road and looking in an easterly direction. This photograph is also taken at the entrance and is looking in a southeasterly direction. You can see the existing warehouse buildings to the left and centre of the picture. This slide is taken looking at in a northeasterly direction direction from Springs Road. Again, this is another photograph taken from Springs Road looking towards the site in a northeasterly direction. So obviously there's the derelict farmhouse in the foreground of the picture. This photograph is taken in a northerly direction further south along Springs Road and is looking toward the site. The existing offices and warehouse of the commercial premises are visible on the right hand side of the picture. In turning to the report, in terms of comments received, the report sets out that Nottinghamshire County Council are the determining planning authority and Bassett Law District Council is only a consultee. Therefore, no consultations have been undertaken by Bassett Law District Council. Turning to the planning issues, this application will be determined by the County Council as the Waste and Minerals Planning Authority. And we have obviously been consulted as Bassett Law District Council in respect of this application. The Council therefore has to decide whether there are any grounds of objection against this proposal. It should be made clear that this application to vary the condition would not allow any further drilling to take place on the site and is for the extension of the evaluation phase and the restoration phase only. The applicant has stated that the evaluation works have been completed, but it's during the evaluation phase that any future planning application for further development would be submitted, rather than during restoration. In terms of the phases of development it is proposed to extend, these are detailed on page 21 of the report and can be outlined as followed. The evaluation phase is phase 3, and this is at the completion of the drilling programme, which was phase 2. The wells will be suspended and made safe in accordance with the relevant regulations and industry best practice, and all above ground equipment, including the drill rig and facilities, will be removed from the site. The evaluation phase itself comprises of the period during which the information gathered during the drilling phase will be assessed by the applicant. Phase 4 is the abandonment, decommissioning and restoration phase. If the results of the exploration work do not warrant further development, the wells will be abandoned and decommissioned in accordance with the relevant regulations and industry best practice. The well site area will then be restored to its original condition. In terms of the applicant's justification for this variation of condition application, they've stated that the drilling in early 2019 allowed the collection and subsequent analysis of a significant amount of data. The drilling confirmed that there were significant gas resources in the area. On the 4th of November of 2019, the UK government confirmed that it would take a presumption against issuing any further hydraulic fracturing consents. This position as an effective moratorium will be maintained until the compelling new evidence is provided which addresses the concerns around the extraction of shale gas and its safety. It is for these reasons that the applicant wishes to apply to extend the evaluation and restoration periods only. The applicant considers that to abandon and restore the well site whilst these matters are being considered by the government would effectively sterilise the site. Should the government determine it is appropriate to lift the moratorium, the applicant has stated that they intend to apply to the Mineral Planning Authority to drill a second well and then hydraulically fracture and flow test that as well. It should, however, be made clear that this application, should it be granted, would not allow the applicant to undertake any further drilling, and this would be subject to further applications and full consideration by the County Council. This planning application does not propose any new areas, boreholes or other requests associated with the works at Springs Road. The application is instead intended to secure a revised timeframe for the already consented operation and remove the permission to drill a second exploratory borehole. In conclusion, as a matter of planning judgment, it is considered that the proposals to extend the evaluation and restoration period of the site for a further 3 years until November 2023 and to relinquish drilling of the horizontal well would not give rise to any significant adverse impacts on the environment or amenity of local residents and would not contravene policies in the development plan or the national planning policy framework, and it's therefore recommended that Bassett Law District Council raise no objections to the proposed development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. As Mr. Kozak said, we're not the determining authority. Therefore, we haven't had any responsibility to advertise this application. Nonetheless, having said that, we did notify the local member for the area, Misson Parish Council, that this meeting tonight was going to consider the application. We don't therefore have any speakers, although we did receive a written submission from Councillor Watson on behalf of the Misson Parish Council. That arrived in members' inboxes this afternoon, so it did come out as soon as we got it. But I appreciate the members may not have had the opportunity to read it or thoroughly digest it. And therefore, I'm going to invite Mr. Kozak to read it out, please, in a minute. So, as I say, that is the only comment we've had. So, Mr. Kozak, if you're ready, please read out what you received.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of their response, the Parish Council initially set out the background, and then they go on to their response, and it states, as long as the current site remains dormant, an extension to the current restoration phase of the planning phase will have no new impact on the local community. Misson Parish Council, nevertheless, feels that the extension should not be granted for the following reasons. Number one, the applicant has made it clear that their prime reason for seeking the extension is to reactivate the site and apply to drill and frack an unspecified number of wells should the current moratorium of fracking or shale gas be lifted. Recognising that such future applications are beyond the scope of this application, we nevertheless urge Nottinghamshire County Council to consider their response to an application to carry out such work on the current site and consider whether the original suite of planning conditions designed to protect the adjacent SSI and the local environment would still be appropriate. Over the past 5 years, the applicant has, apart from restoring the site to what it was, done what they initially set out to do, which was to determine the nature and extent of the gas reserves at Springs Road. The extension they now seek is for a different purpose, i.e. drilling and fracking, which would generate a range of different impacts that should be subject to a different set of planning considerations. The question is whether, under such circumstances, consent is transferable. When the initial application was granted, those objecting to the plans were given the assurance that this was a temporary exploratory well site that did not include fracking. This 3-year extension not only challenges the concept of temporary, but also brings the prospect of fracking on this site a step closer. The applicant is also on record as saying that the limitations on the site at Springs Road make it unsuitable for large-scale gas production. The inference being that they would at some time require a new site in the area that could accommodate the number of wells needed to optimise production. The fact that the applicant waited almost until the last minute to seek this extension has not gone without notice. We note that the construction industry has managed to function throughout the pandemic and feel it's somewhat disingenuous for them to leave it this late to make a response. There's no reason why this application could not have been made at a time when they could have undertaken the work within the time frame specified in the permission. The close proximity of the site to the SSI and concerns about on-site activity having an adverse impact upon bird breeding success suggests that the work to restore the site would, in any event, have to wait until summer of 2021, so an extension to the current permission will have been gained by default. This is not the first time that the conduct of the applicant has been found wanting. There was an unexplained delay to the completion of the construction phase of the site during 2017, followed by an application to have the deadline extended beyond the start of the 2018 bird breeding season. Apart from creating a significant volume of work for all those participating in the consequent consultation, it demonstrates either a lack of competence or a general lack of respect for the planning process on the part of the applicant. This time, the County Council would not appear to be under any obligation to grant permission, and we feel that the application should be rejected and not reward them for their multiple non-compliance. If this strikes as a sour note, then it is born out of a widely held desire to see an end of this development. Since the spectre of the shale gas development was first raised in 2014, the lives of many local residents have been blighted, first by the uncertainty of what the enterprise might entail, then by the sheer effort involved making their concerns understood. Many of us have worked very hard to articulate these concerns and engage with a complex and highly technical planning process stacked largely in the favour of the applicant. Since permission was granted, each new phase of development has brought new challenges which have impacted our daily lives. The secrecy and intimidation encountered during the initial seismic surveys, the influx of protesters squatting on private land near the site, a massive police presence, ad hoc road closures, trees being felled to stop protesters climbing on trucks, court injunctions threatening members of the local community, on-site security making the area look like a prison, are all things we've had to contend with over the past 5 years, and quite frankly, we've had enough. Extending the planning permission for another 3 years, whilst no doubt conferring a financial benefit on the applicant, does nothing for the local community other than giving us another 3 years of uncertainty and anxiety to look forward to. Whatever the applicant may wish to do at Springs Road needs to be set against the background of what has been happening in the wider world and a shift towards renewable sources of energy. It's acknowledged that there will need to be gas supplies to be maintained over the next few years, but nobody will be able to exploit reserves of onshore gas in the UK without a fight. A highly motivated and well-organised network of activists spells trouble for any development which, added to the concerns about the effect of fracking-induced earthquakes may have on local properties, does not bode well for this community. It is our hope the UK government, as part of the range of eye-catching initiatives announced in the advance of the forthcoming COP26 conference in Glasgow, decide to make the current moratorium on fracking permanent. If it does, then all well and good. But if it does not, there is no reason why NCC might want to give the but if it does not, there is no reason why the County Council might want to give the applicant a head start by granting this application and precipitating a conflict any sooner than it has to. Miss and Parish Council therefore objects to the application to extend the existing planning permission for a further 3 years and calls on the County Council to order the applicant to restore the site in accordance with the conditions as soon as is practicable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Okay, so now it's open to members to make comment and ask questions. And as usual, I'll go around in alphabetical order. So could I start with Councillor Brand, please?
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask what the response has been from other parish councils, not necessarily in Bassetlaw, because I think Misson's been the only one to respond, but those just over the border in Doncaster. Could I ask what their views are, please?
As I've stated earlier, we as Bassetlaw District Council, we are a consultee in the process, so we didn't run a consultation ourselves. But in terms of the comments published on the Nottinghamshire County Council website, Blackstone Parish Council have raised no objections to the proposals. Finningley Parish Council have raised no objections, and Bawtry have stated they do not support the proposal given the government's position on fracking at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing further at the moment, Councillor.
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Challoner, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically, it's a comment. Obviously, that area lies northeast of where Arworth Colliery used to be, and Arworth used to mine under Mizzen out that way, and under Bawtry used to be in the Toppard seam or the Barnsley seam, which we'll know about. And I don't know if it went as far out as Mizzen Springs and where it's showing you on the map, but obviously they've gone and done all this this investigation drilling and things like that. So it is in what I call virgin ground, and hence, I mean, because in the top yards we used to have a decent roof, but the floors were fairly soft, which was a shale, and that's what they've obviously gone into, which is for this exploratory gas extraction, which obviously they found that there is shale extraction, or whatever they want to call it, fracking, that would be ideal on this site. Hence, that's why what they're doing is, it seems like to me, is they want to shelve it for a while to see what the government's recommendations are, as in if the government's going to be in favour of fracking, or is it going to be down to peer pressure that the government goes to another form of renewable energy. But that area of whichever way they go in, any direction, they are going into what I would regard as virgin ground. So there is going to be a lot of gas under there, because the top yards, as we knew it out that way, was very susceptible to spontaneous combustion, and we had a lot of problems with fires and things like that underground there. That's why it got sealed off in the early 90s. But obviously, basically, it's all down to, I know we're just the people that have said, yeah, if we're in favour or whatever, or against it. The thing is all this is down to what the government recommendations are. So all it is, it's like, it's there if we need it, if they change their mind as regards to a shale gas extraction. So it's one of them. It's a yin and yang situation. So to me, I'm sort of like, I don't know which way to look at it. You know, it's ever, for if ever it's needed, it's there. But then when you do look around within what's happening around our area, within Bassetlaw, although they're gradually getting rid of coal-fired power stations, there is West Burton, which has got a gas enrichment plant. Now, all these could connect together, and the shale gas extraction could technically be pumped over there, i.e. whether it's under, underground pipe work or whatever. So it's all a big picture that at this moment in time, within the crystal ball, isn't all that clear. So it's one of them. We are in a hard place to make a decision as a council. So that's just my comment on it, Chair. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for that, Dave. Councillor Councillor Charlesworth, do you have any questions or comments, please?
I don't have any questions or comments, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't think Councillor Freeman has joined the meeting, so I'll move on to Councillor Oxby.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one on a point of clarification from John, if I may, please. John, you said that 3 of the local councils, the parish councils, had made comments, and Bawtry had objected to the application. Do you mean the application as it is tonight to extend?
Yes, so the county council, obviously the county council have this planning application themselves, and it's published on their website. So looking at their website, they publish consultee comments, and those 3 parishes that I've mentioned are the ones that have made the comments. We've been provided with the comments to Misson Parish Council, but they haven't been published on the county council's website as of yet.
That's the one I noticed. That's what worried me slightly. Thank you for that, Chairman. That's cleared it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richardson, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I have one. If we approve this for the restoration period, John, would they have to come back, the applicant, in that 3 years if they wanted to have a planning application for drilling? Would it be in that time, or would it run out of time? I mean, I'm not like housing, but I just wondered if they had a time limit on the next application coming forwards.
My experience of applications for hydraulic fracturing is somewhat limited, unfortunately, but the applicant has stated that if they were to make a further application for actual extraction, that would happen during the evaluation phase. So any further applications generally would be made during the evaluation phase, because once they're restoring the site, then they're obliged to restore it back to its current condition, and that could obviously be abortive if they are going to gain any further consents. So they would need a position from the government to be able to progress to a further application. But yes, we would need to see it in the specified time frame now. But again, I'd just reiterate that any further drilling isn't permitted at the moment. There is a moratorium on it, and they would need to apply for a further permission from the county council, which we'd also consider as a statutory consultee.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Is that it, Councillor Richardson? Thank you. Councillor Sanders, do you have any questions or comments?
Just a clarification, if I may, Chair. This is a variation of a condition to go for 3 years, John. Could they just keep coming back at, different periods, just to keep extending it and extending it and extending it, depending on how long it takes the government to make their mind up on shale gas?
Hypothetically, yes.
So
but obviously, we wouldn't want to see that, and we wouldn't want to see a permission extended indefinitely. At the moment, we're recommending we don't object to the extension of the 2 phases specified. But in the future, obviously, if the government isn't going to change their position and provide more clarity, we would like to see the site restored to its former state.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schuller, any questions or comments, please?
During your summary, John, you talked about the evaluation being completed, and I'm wondering why they want an extension to the evaluation period if they've completed the evaluation. If you've either completed it or you need an extension to complete it.
That's because I think I touched on this a little while ago, because obviously while they're in the evaluation period, there isn't any obligation to begin restoring the site. So if you just extend that, if you extend the valuation period, then the site can remain as it is, sterile effectively.
Yeah.
But if then they go into the restoration phase, then they're obliged to start restoring the site. So the applicant has stated within their submission that any further applications to the county council for hydraulic fracturing would be made during the evaluation phase, not the restoration phase, because then the site is being restored back to its current state, its previous state, sorry, and it would effectively sterilise the site for any future applications. So that's the applicant's justification for extending the 2 phases.
So we've got a complete position that they've actually finished the evaluation, but they're not going to actually specify that in real terms. Can I just ask you then, in terms of a temporary extension, would that normally be 3 years? Because that seems quite a long temporary extension.
It depends on the type of development. I think the 3 years gives them a little bit of breathing room and a bit of comfort for the government to maybe make a decision on the future of hydraulic fracturing, and also gives them the chance to commence that restoration of the site. But in all honesty, we've got to consider the impact of extending this. There isn't any drilling that's being proposed, and this permission wouldn't grant that. But fundamentally it's the applicant hedging their bets and waiting to see what position the government takes. So they feel that they've identified a site with a resource. Whether that can be efficiently and acceptably extracted is not a matter for consideration here. That would be a future application, but the applicant is obviously seeking to secure their position for a future application if that is ever potentially on the cards. But obviously we wait to see what the government's position is going to be on that in the future.
But it seems to be in direct opposition to our stance on renewable energy as a council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, can I make some comments, please, before we go around again? And I think it's worth pointing out that some of the, well, all the statutory agencies don't appear to raise any objection. The Environment Agency, Natural England, the Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust and Highways don't appear to raise any objection to the extension. And Misson Parish accept that the extension will have no new impact upon the local community. But clearly, Misson Parish are fed up with this. They suffered enormous disruption over the years, disruption from road closures, protesters, and the consequent actions of the police and security guards. So clearly the parish feel that if the extension goes ahead, that increases the chances of there being a successful application for drilling sometime in the future. So I think that summarises their position, which I thought was a very well argued contribution tonight. So that's what I wanted to say. I won't go around again, but if anyone wants to raise anything, please do, and we'll see if we can manage it that way this evening. I've got Councillor Schuller and Councillor Richardson, so I'll start with Councillor Schuller.
I just wanted to ask a further question about the non-designated heritage assets on the site. What would be the long-term impact on the rocket site? Page 17 specifies that we've got non-designated heritage assets of rocket launch pads. So what would be the long-term impact on those, and not just of an extension, but potentially drilling, because that's obviously what we're looking at now?
Obviously, I mean, this site is now permitted, and if any future applications are brought forward, obviously we would need to consider the impact of the well infrastructure, the drilling infrastructure, the compounds on the non-designated heritage assets, and we would be able to comment to the county council accordingly then. This site has already been developed for exploratory purposes, the compounds in situ, but at the moment the applicant has a planning permission which obliges them to restore the land back to its previous condition. So in terms of this, I don't foresee any long-term impact on the non-designated heritage assets, but longer term, if we ever see a new proposal, we would have to consider that very carefully.
Just going back to that then, can I just ask, have we have talked to our heritage team, our conservation team, and whether they've got any concerns or anything to raise?
There's not a new proposal to discuss with them at this moment in time. Obviously the county council granted this permission previously, so at this moment, there's no additional harm to those assets. Any additional harm would obviously come with any future development that may be proposed, should it ever be proposed.
Thank you.
Okay, good. I've got 3 councillors and I'll take them in this order, please. Councillor Richardson, Councillor Brand, Councillor Sanders. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. If the government decides on a different proposal for excavation or what we have in exploration, how long and the site has to close down? I know it's, you know, there now at the moment and capped. Is there need for anything going forward on a time limit, do you think, that they would have to have in closing it down environmentally wise?
Sorry, could you just, do you mind repeating that?
Yeah, if the government changes so it's not the gas and it's going to be the shale, and that's what they decide, then my question is really how long would it take to get that site changed back to its original state if they're not going to use it? Would there be a time limit on that, or how would it apply? How would they make sure that they do that, you know?
Basically, the planning permission does oblige them to do that. So I'm just going to have a look at the restoration conditions. So there are quite a few conditions imposed on the permission.
It was just the time, really, John, if you want to just find that.
I don't have that to hand because basically the application that the county received originally was accompanied by an environmental statement.
Yeah.
So this was development covered by the environmental impact assessment regulations, and that specifically states the restoration time period. So the planning permission does tie it down to a certain period, but I don't have that to hand, unfortunately, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Councillor Brand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My concern is that in granting this for a further 3 years, bearing in mind that the community of Misson has been impacted since 2014, another 3 years will take it to a decade. Although activity is less at the moment, that doesn't mean to say that protesters won't come back, that they won't have the same problems with tree felling, the police, the roads blocked and all the rest of it. And as you will have seen on the map that John put up earlier, Misterton is no great distance from that. So I've experienced it at first hand. So I think that we should listen to the voice of our community. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Sanders.
Thanks, Chair. It's a comment rather than a question. Although my own personal preference would be to get rid of this site and in favour of green energy, I take on board the comments of Councillor Challoner when he talked about the West Burton Power Station and the potential use of this shale gas there. But I'd like to make a proposal that in our reply to the County Council that we make the comment that although we would support the application this time round, that if the government doesn't make a decision within the 3-year timescale that we're talking about, and bearing in mind the amount of disruption that colleagues have talked about earlier, that if this company did come back for a further extension, then we would not be in a position to support that extension and would push for them to close this site. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. before we sort of discuss that, I think I'd like to take some legal advice on that, because we would be binding a future committee, I suppose, and on whether that's a good idea, whether that's lawful, I don't know. So I was going to ask Mr. Worrell for his advice on that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be something I'd recommend, Chair, because, like you say, it would be predetermining effectively a future consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, could I make a comment, please, Councillor?
Yeah,
John?
do.
I'm sorry, I haven't got that facility on my iPad to put my hand up for thingy,
Okay.
you know, to raise a question. Yeah, it's just obviously picking up on a few points when you were summing up, Chair. Obviously, in our agenda that we get, obviously there's no correspondence from Nottinghamshire Wildlife or the Environmental Agency and things like that, because this application is a county application, and all they're asking for basically is our concerns and our opinion if we support it, which you have pointed out quite clearly, Chair. So in the aspect, obviously my understanding of the way that the planning process goes, because it's a mineral or gas extraction, that's where it becomes a county issue for their planning side. If they were to agree to whatever the recommendation is at county level, whether it's either against or in favour, if it comes back to Bassetlaw District Council, the side which would come to us as the planning authority would be obviously to do with the buildings which would be around it. I think that comes under our remit. I think it's just that it's because it's a mineral extraction and gas extraction, that's why it's counties, and they're asking us for our obviously opinion on it, Chair, which you have pointed out. So I think it's a very, very difficult one, like I said before, because we're being asked to either support or go against something that is totally out of our hands, because this is a government issue as regarding the future of fracking, hydraulic extraction, whatever they want to call it, whatever name they're going to make it, try and look good in the public perception. But at the end of the day, we all know within Bassetlaw that we have previously had a site which did exactly the same just outside Barnby Moor, and we know the problems that this caused for a lot of people within Bassetlaw, both residents and obviously general public trying to get about their different, you know, jobs of work and things like that. So it is a very, very touchy subject, because it's all these extraction wellheads and all this are always out in the countryside. And us being a country of country-loving folk, I would say, you know, when we're asked to do certain things like this last weekend, look how many birds are in your garden and all that. It's the overall effect that it's going to have on the general life. And the government can't make the mind up whether they want it or they don't. And so it's down to peer pressure. And they're then going to turn around and say, oh, well, Bassetlaw District Council said this, and Bassetlaw, they always want to do the blame game and try and blame somebody else for their incompetency. So at the end of the day, whether we support it or object to it, us as a council have gone through the process, which we do as a planning committee, and then you turn around but at the end of the day, it is a county issue, which they are either going to be in favour or against. So that's just my view on it, Chair, and I'd like to thank you for your comments as well, and all the rest of the planning committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I feel I ought to come back to Councillor Sanders, because you were making a proposal which the legal officer is advising that it's perhaps not a good idea, because it would bind a future committee. So are you happy with that, Councillor, that advice?
Yes, Chair, more than happy. I'm always willing to be advised. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So, is there anyone else wanting to speak? I haven't got a list of any more speakers, so one final call for any comments, please. No, we're all, oh no, someone has, which is Councillor Schiller.
Yeah, just in support of what Councillor Brand was saying about the fact that we really should be supporting our communities, and Mizzen are in total objection to this. And looking at page 20 in our reports, it talks about how this is it's contraindicated in their local neighbourhood plan. It just feels very much as though the people of Mizzen in the letter that John read out earlier and in their neighbourhood plan are being totally railroaded, and we're just not taking their thoughts, feelings and perceptions and the impact to heart, really.
Okay, thank you. And we've got Councillor Brand who wants to make a comment now.
Yeah, well, it was just to follow up my earlier comment, and also to thank Councillor Schuller for supporting what I said. In response to an earlier question of hers, the point was made by John that we need to consider the impact, and that's what I think I've done, and that's my overriding approach throughout this. As I said earlier, another 3 years will be a decade of upheaval for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's it now. So we'll proceed to the vote, and we're voting on the recommendation at the bottom of page 22, which I will read out. It is recommended that Bassetlaw District Council raise no objections to the proposed development. So I will go round and start with Councillor Brand.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Thank you. Against.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Against, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Against, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too will vote against. So that recommendation falls. So I'm looking now to Mr. Krodak. So now, can we state our reasons why we're against it?
So what we'll need to do now is obviously object to the county councils, and make that representation. So we'll need to draft that response, and obviously we'll need the reasons for opposing or objecting to the proposal from members within that response.
Okay, so is there a member who wants to kick off and give their reasons for the way that they voted? Yeah,
I will, Chair.
Brand. Sorry, it's Councillor Brand. So sorry, and then
sorry.
Challoner.
Okay, well, for me, it's to reiterate what I've already said about another 3 years, equaling a decade of disruption for the local community, and the fact that I think we should listen to our local communities, who are the ones who are impacted most by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Thanks, Chair. It's my obviously reason for objecting is because of the government's incompetency to make a clear decision whether they are in favour or against of hydraulic extraction, shale gas extraction, fracking, whatever they want to call it, because it is keeping communities hanging on a thin line where it is affecting them. It's affecting communities as well, when we're being asked to come forward from a government encouraging people with neighbourhood plans and things like that. And you cannot make a thorough neighbourhood plan with this hanging over your head about shale gas extraction. So that is my reason, because it's all down to the government, and all they're doing is these companies, they're keeping them on the line thinking if we need them, they're there. But at the end of the day, it's causing misery to communities.
Thank you. Any extra reasons from anyone else? Councillor Richardson, your hand is raised. And then Councillor...
Yes, sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair, I was just going to totally agree with David. Until the government make their mind up what they're doing, these companies are just laying there and the land's not used, it's capped off. They'll come back again for whatever in a few years' time. I'm sure they'll try to come back for another 3 until the government may change their mind again. But I'm all in favour of that with David saying, and the community, obviously.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
I think I'll go back to the point that I made, that it's in complete opposition to our stance on renewable energy within our council, and what we've actually outlined in our new draft local plan. The other thing I would say is about the detrimental impact on the community of Mizzen, and that's not just about the emotional impact that they've described quite well in their report. It's the economic impact on that community also, because they must be suffering with the fact that this site is there on hold constantly, and it's bound to be impacting on other employment coming into the area, etc., and probably in the cost of their houses and etc. So I think it's got a huge impact on our community, and we need to back them.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Chair Dave Challoner.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Just picking up there on something that Councillor Schuler said. Obviously, this council, Bassetlaw District Council, has undertaken a local development plan, or local plans it's being called. I can't recall if the Mizzen area was part of this local plan, but the way that the housing has been allocated out, that there's certain areas that are earwigged or eared for development, this could have an effect on any future development out at Mizzen, because which developer would want to be near a fracking site? Once again, the government is hell-bent on putting houses here, there and everywhere, but they're not looking at the other consequences, because they can't make a decision on this fracking issue, that it could have a future impact on housing development in our district. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Krazak, I saw you scribbling down those comments. So have you got enough to work on to work something up for the next PCG?
Yeah, no, but excuse me, Chairman. The letter of response will be referred to the next planning consultation group for the agreement of the wording.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I think that completes that agenda, and also completes our public business tonight. So thank you very much for everyone for attending and your participation, and good night.